Hey guys, what's up? My name is Carlos and welcome to Robin School. Why in the world would I want to teach about robins? What is it about robins exactly that gets me so excited? Well, let me be honest with you guys. I haven't always been a bird guy. Like, I've always been a falcon guy only because I love the Atlanta Falcons. Go Dirty Birds. But besides my love for falcons, I'd never really been a bird guy up until about 4 years ago. Let me tell you guys what happened 4 years ago. About 4 years ago, I was in one of the worst seasons of worry of my entire life. When I talk about worry, I'm talking about major anxiety, not being able to control my thoughts. And you know, I'd been in one season worse than that about 10 years before that. But about 4 years ago, things were getting pretty bad. And I'll never forget the day that I walked out of my house, walked out the front door, completely overtaken with worry. Worry was consuming every part of my day. And I just sat down right here on my front porch. And I remember taking a couple deep breaths. I was in this exact place. And I was like, God, I'm so worried. Almost to the point of tears. You know, sometimes when you get so worried, almost to the point of tears, or even to the point of tears. And I'll never forget, I was sitting here and I don't know, about 5 feet in front of me, a robin just came and went. And so right here in front of me, there sits this robin. And he sat there and he kind of went. And he looked at me. And I felt like when he was looking at me, he was going, why are you worried? Why in the world are you worried? And I watched this robin, and he'd hop around the yard and he'd pick up a worm and he'd eat it. And he'd pick up another worm and he'd eat it. And I began to look up. And I began to look at the canopy of trees that were right above me. We live in one of the most beautiful places in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a neighborhood called Creve Hall. And there are trees everywhere, and the trees and the landscape here is gorgeous. It's honestly, my house sits with this in this corner where there's like 4 houses. It feels like a park. I mean, our backyard's coming together literally feels like a animal sanctuary because there's so much wildlife that's happening back there. The trees are giant, they're gorgeous. The canopy of trees spreads all across all of our backyards, and people just love to sit out there and relax and look at nature. And so as I began to look up and gaze up and look around, I began to see all of these birds. There was actually like an entire community of birds that were living above me. And what I realized was that they didn't have one single care in the world. Like, when they were hungry, they hopped out of the tree, they went to the ground, and it literally seemed wherever they landed, they'd pull up a worm. And I'm like, are there that many worms in my yard? And so I started to dig around and I couldn't find one worm. But yet these birds, they would land and they'd pluck up these worms and they were being fed. And it reminded me of the scripture. And the scripture is in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, 26, and 27. And this is what it says. And this is Jesus talking. He says, so I tell you, don't worry about everyday life. Whether you have enough food, drink, and clothes, doesn't life consist of more than food and clothing? Verse 26, look at the birds. They don't need to plant or harvest or put food in barns because your heavenly Father feeds them, and you are far more valuable to him than they are. Can all of your worries add a single moment to your life? Of course not. And honestly, in that moment, just like that, my anxiety and my worries began to dissipate. All it took was me realizing that all of these birds were being taken care of. And the robins, the reason why the robins were the ones that I really focused on, because there were so many robins in my yard at the time. Little did I know at that moment that those same robins that I saw in my yard would begin to show me just how good God is. These same robins, just a few weeks later, began building a nest on one of the gutters in my house. And I spent the next 30 days watching God take care of every single need that they had. And so what I want to do today is allow you guys to pay attention to the robins in your neighborhood, to see in just 30 days how God can take care of those robins. And if he can take care of the robins, I promise you, during this pandemic, he can take care of you. Now, all of us, practically all of us, unless you're living like in a city center somewhere, but even in city centers, you have robins living in the canopies all around us. The first thing that we need to know is that robins don't live in nests. Okay, that would be like, I don't know, your mom living in your bassinet, right? Like the nest is simply just the cradle for where they're going to take care of their babies. That's not where robins live. Robins roost on branches, they sleep in branches, they sleep in trees. They're not sleeping in nests. So when you see a robin building a nest, you know that it is baby time. It is go time. And in a matter of 30 days, they're going to build their nest, lay their eggs. The eggs are gonna hatch. You're gonna see the nestlings become fledglings, fly out of the nest, turn into teenage robins, and fly away. Let's look at some of the details. Now behind me right here is Lala. Lala is a robin that has been nesting on the back side of my house. Literally, this is my back door. That is Lala. That is how close robins can get to humans. Now, since she started nesting there, we obviously have not been using the back door. This is about as close as I can get to her before she flies away. And so if you ever see a robin's nest, you don't want to get too close. You don't want to check the eggs every few hours. No, you want to let them have their space, or else they may abandon the nest. And that's not something that we want to see happen. So what ended up happening was, and we'll just use Lala as an example. I saw her the very first day she began building this nest. I actually have footage of this happening. It was in my Insta story just a few weeks ago. And so what ends up happening with the robin when they nest is this. Now, it's important to know that whenever you see a robin building a nest, whenever you see a robin with straw or grass in its mouth, you want to avoid that nesting area if possible. It takes about mom and dad, and both the robins build the nest, about between 2 to 6 days to build the nest. And once they built that final nest, they're going to use that nest for about 5 weeks. Now, when a robin finishes using the nest, okay, so when all the babies are out, more than likely they're going to build another nest somewhere else. So very rarely do they build a nest on top of the nest. That actually did happen with Lala. She built a nest on top of her old nest, but rarely does that happen. Now, a couple simple facts about robins. Robins, their length is about 9 to 11 inches long, so a little bit under a foot. Their wingspan, though, can spread to 14 to 16 inches, which actually it's a lot bigger than you think when you actually see them spread wide open. But they only weigh 2 to 3 ounces. They only weigh 2 to 3 ounces, which a pound is 16 ounces. So it's not a lot at all. They're nimble, they're very light, but they have been clocked at flying at this speed. Are you ready? There has been robins clocked at flying up to 36 miles an hour. That is fast. Now, in your backyard, they're probably flying about 20 miles an hour, but they can fly up to 36 miles an hour. This is Henry. And Henry is one of the reasons why almost 80% of robins that are born every year don't make it till the next year. So you guys got to know, if you're going to be watching nests, there's cats outside that love to take the little fledglings and eat them. Now, one thing you can do to help protect them is you can get them a little cat bib, and this is what we put on our cat. Whenever our cat comes outside, he puts this on, and all it does is it messes with the cat's timing. So Henry can't pounce on them like he normally can. And we just put him on him during fledgling season. So, you know, only for a couple weeks, and then he can go back out and start killing all the moles that are in my yard. So back to the nest. After they're done building the nest, they're probably gonna build another nest. The beautiful thing about spring and robins is they lay 3 sets of eggs, okay? When I say sets, they're gonna lay their first set, their first clutch of eggs is going to be between 2 to 4 eggs. Rarely will you see 5 eggs. Every once in a while you will see 5 eggs, but normally it's between 2 to 4 eggs. And they're going to do that and go through that process 3 times during the spring. So right now, if you see robins around your house, just know that this is the very beginning of the season, and they're probably gonna lay 2 more batches, broods, sets, clutches of eggs. And so you guys have plenty of time to take all the information that I'm teaching you and put it to practice when you watch these birds. Now, one of the things you guys need to know about these eggs is Mama Robin is not gonna sit on those eggs all day long until she's ready to begin to incubate all of the eggs. So when you see one egg in a nest, know that mama's not gonna be sitting on that nest. She's gonna still be out finding food for herself, getting as much nutrition as she can in her body. After there's 3 eggs, okay, again, 2 to 4 eggs, but let's just say 3, that's when she's gonna start sitting on the nest 50 minutes a day, all day long. The only 10 minutes an hour that she hops off the nest is go feed herself. A lot of times you'll see dad come and bring mama food as well. And it's just mama robin that's gonna be incubating those eggs. So once she sits on those eggs, it's going to be about 14 days of incubating. And then around day 14, you're going to see a miracle. You're going to begin to see these baby birds hatch out of those eggs. And then we're gonna go to the front part of the house because that's where that's happening right now with my robin, Lulu. That right there, my friends, is Lulu. Lulu is the mama bird in the front of my house, and she laid her eggs about 24 days ago, which if you do the math, after her eggs hatched and the babies have been in there for about 9 to 10 days now, her babies, and look, I wanna show you how close she actually is. She never really leaves this distance from her nest. So there she is, and then her nest is right there, okay? Oh, you see the babies right there? There they are. Now, those babies are fledglings. I mean, they're not officially because they haven't fledged, they haven't jumped out yet. Oh, and there's Poppy. There is Daddy right there. You see him? And so you'll always see the mom and the dad, whenever they're not in the nest, they're just looking for eggs, they're just looking for worms for their babies. Let's see if we can catch this in action right now. Got him. Let's see if she eats that or if she takes that to her kids. Oh, she's not eating it. So unless they eat it right away, they're normally not going to eat the worm, and they're going to go take it to their clutch. Take that, National Geographic. Okay, so a couple other facts about these babies. Once they hatch from the egg, they weigh a little less than a quarter. I mean, they are so tiny. A lot of people ask, what do you do if you find a baby that has fallen out of a nest? What you need to do is you need to put it back in the nest. There's a myth out there that robins can sense smell, and that's how they can tell if a human has touched their baby. It's actually not true at all. Many robins are placed back in the nest, and you can pick it up, put it back in the nest if it's a nestling. Now, if it's a fledgling, which means it's out of the nest on purpose, do not put that robin back in the nest. It's building its strength and it's gonna fly around. But whenever you see these nestlings hopping around your yard, that is when you gotta keep the cats inside or get a cat bib and put it on your cat. So it takes them about 14 days to leave the nest. They're being fed about 100 times a day per parent. So 200 times a day, these little babies are getting fed. And by the time they leave the nest, they are going to have eaten over, and it's mostly earthworms, over 30 feet of earthworms. That is so gross, but it's so cool at the same time. Now, another question that people might have is, what about all the poop? Here's the deal. When a baby robin gets fed by the parent, they poop within 5 seconds. So from 5 seconds after they get fed, the poop comes out. Now, can you imagine if all that poop ended up in the nest? It actually doesn't. And so this is what ends up happening. Now, hold your breakfast inside if you're a little queasy. What the parent robins do is they feed the robin, boop, and then the little baby robin sticks its butt up and it poops, and then they either completely eat the poop, or what's cool about the poop is it comes out in a fecal sac, which is kind of like disposable diapers for robins. And some robins, when the baby robins get a little older and there's not as nutrition inside the poop for the parents, there's not as much, they'll actually take that fecal sac and they'll fly it away and they'll drop it somewhere else, probably on top of your head if you're somebody like me and gets pooped on by birds a lot. But a lot of times they're actually eating the poop, which is, it seems kind of gross, but a baby doesn't have a lot of time to process the food inside of them. So actually when it comes back out, it's almost a full worm, okay? So they've only taken a little bit of that nutrition and the parents can eat it up. Yum, yum, yum. So they're feeding the babies for 14 days, and then the babies are gonna hop out. Once the babies hop out, mama and dad will still feed them for a few more days. But after those few days, these baby robins, these fledglings, are gonna have to learn on their own from the other robins in the area. And mom and dad are on their way to go build a new nest in another site for it all to start over again. Guys, this is why I love watching robins, because you can see their entire life cycle in 30 days. And you can see how much God cares for them. He really cares for everything he's created. If he cares for these robins, how much more is he gonna care for you? And I love that you can actually see these baby robins go from like the ugliest looking things in the world to the cutest things in the world as well. Yes, there are predators out there. You gotta remember that most robins aren't gonna make it past the first year of life. Most babies, just so you know, so you don't get your heart broken, aren't gonna make it out of the nest. There's gonna be a lot of babies that don't make it out of the nest. But the ones that do, those strong ones, once they make it past a year, even though most robins don't make it past a year, the ones that do can live up to the longest living robin ever recorded with a tag on its little feeties was 13 years. 13 years, but they'll normally live about 5 years. So guys, there it is, Robin School. Hopefully you guys learned a lot about robins. We're gonna be doing a Q&A, and so I want you guys to throw any questions you might have, put it in the little question box that's gonna be on the next slide, and I'm gonna answer those as quickly as I can. All day long today is gonna be Robin Day, and then I promise for you non-Robin lovers, we're gonna be talking about some other things in the next few days. But for today, I wanted us to see the goodness of God through the little robins that are in our front yard. All right guys, Robin School, Carlitos saying peace up, A-Town down, and I'll talk to you guys in a few minutes.